podcast where tech minds meet.
Oh, hey, before we get started today, don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell.
Welcome to the Tech Panel, where we dive into the world of startups, innovation, and disruptive technologies. I'm your host, Arvin, and today we have a special guest who's played a major role in shaping the tech industry across Australia and beyond. If you're interested in hearing how tech giants grow and evolve, you won't want to miss this episode. And today we're joined by Chris Ridd, the CEO of EventsAir, the former managing director of Xero in Australia. And with over 30 years in experience in tech, Chris has driven growth at some of the most well-known companies in the industry. He's here to share his journey, his insights, and what's next for EventsAir. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here. Thanks.
Well, start us off. Tell us a little bit about EventsAir.
So EventsAir has been around for 30 years. It's been through a number of iterations from desktop, ultimately to cloud and everything in between. But it was a company that was started by a founder, Trevor Gardner, who was domain expert in events. And so it's evolved, and the IP around events has evolved over that journey. And we basically provide event management platform for serious event planners, associations, corporations, government, education, or anyone who's running one or indeed many events. There's a lot that happens in and around events. So registration, logistics, and speakers, exhibitions, and so on and so forth. So our software manages all the complexity to help run great events. So like I said, we've been around for a long time, but recently in the last couple of years, acquired by private equity and expanding globally. So it's quite an exciting journey that we're on.
Interesting. And, obviously you were running this business during some pretty interesting times in the market, given that COVID in particular was on the rise. How has that shaped the growth of the company and influenced the direction that you've driven the business?
Yeah, so COVID was interesting because it might be counterintuitive, but there was a lot of investment, and our business grew quite significantly through COVID, even though events effectively you'd think stopped. But in actual fact, the industry needed a way to connect outside of in person. So everything went virtual. We built a virtual platform for our customers to allow them to run events, which effectively saved a lot of professional conference organizers through that period. There was also a flurry of investment that came into the event tech space. And what happened after COVID was that there was this violent shift back to in person. And I'll be honest, a lot of these newcomers in the virtual space only got found out. And so there's been a big correction. Now we've pivoted back to in person, but that was always our roots. We were always very strong in that in-person space. We still have customers that will do what we call more of a hybrid type format, where they will allow people to come into an event virtually or run webinars, but that's dropped right off. So our business continues to grow very well around in person, but it has been quite a marked difference in where we were maybe a few years ago.
Tell me about some of your clients. Like who were you working with, I guess, maybe 10 years ago, and then who are you working with now?
Well, there's a lot of what our core market is really professional conference organizers that do this for a living. So they might have any number of events they run for corporate. They might do a large conference. They might do something at MCEC or Brisbane Convention Centre, where they've got large exhibitions, and so there's a lot of that we do. We've done some really interesting things as well. Our platforms tend to be attractive to the more complex side of events. So, for example, over the journey, we've done events and all the accommodation and travel and so forth for events like the London Olympics, Rugby World Cup. There's a lot of sporting bodies that use our software as well. So anything that requires complex logistics and tracking, and also anything involving the registration, venues and so forth, they'll use our software for that. So we've got about 1,300 customers globally. About half our revenue and is offshore. The US and Europe are big markets for us. And we basically appeal, as I said, much more to the serious event planner. There's other software providers on the market, but we're very much at that complex end of the market.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you're more skewed towards the in-person types of organizations. Does that mean you're moving away from that virtual space and just trying to be gold in this one particular area, or do you see it as 50-50 in the organization?
It's a great question. I mean, I was sort of surprised that the world swung back so violently to in person. I compare it a little bit like work from home. When COVID was over, as businesses, we kind of embraced this notion of more flexible in flexible hours for stuff where people could work from anywhere.
Mhm.
Because I think if you remember at the beginning of COVID, everyone thought the world was going to end because people couldn't possibly be productive working from home. And actually, in some cases, it was actually more productive. But I think we've swung back to a good balance there, whereas events have definitely moved back to in person. I think people are craving that human connection.
Mhm.
Um, and I've been surprised that there hasn't been as strong or emphasis on that flexibility because, travel and, environmental factors and things. So, but it's still there and we absolutely embrace that. We think there is definitely a need to be able to allow people for various reasons to be able to participate in events without actually having to physically be there. Um, but we find a lot of the customers are wanting to do in person. So we're effectively following where the market's going, but we can do both.
I also love how you talked about that hybrid model as well, because people want the face to face, but if you can't physically travel, you've still got that offering and that value add of being able to provide that virtual element at a live event. Yeah, it's a great way to pivot.
Yeah, I think the world's changed a bit. I mean, we're seeing a shorter format of events and people moving more towards um, capturing content and events and using that post event in sort of like an on demand type format.
Yeah.
Gone are the days where people will sit at home and sit through a 2-day conference virtually and, virtual exhibitions and so forth. I think there was a lot of fatigue around that sort of model. So it's moving back to a mix, but it's largely at the moment very much an in-person focus that we're seeing.
What are some of the other ways your business has innovated, or have you got some plans for future innovation?
Oh, that we're always innovating. I mean, at the moment, we are, we're a platform that's been around a while, so a lot of our focus has been in modernizing our technology to make it more flexible. We've built an open API, an application programming interface. Part of what we want to do, we want to be very flexible to connect with other pieces of software. Event technology doesn't live on its own. It needs to speak to typically a CRM or a finance application and so forth. So we spent a lot of investment building out to be a very open platform. It's something that in my Xero days, learning from that experience to be a very open ecosystem so you can engage and connect with other platforms is really important. And right now, a big focus for us is around attendee experience. So we're uplifting a lot of our technology so that, our customers run events, they get judged by the experience that they create for an attendee. So things like the attendee app or how they register an event or how they're doing things like meeting matching. There's some really cool technologies and we're experimenting and looking at AI that can enable much better matching at events. So there's a whole series of innovations that we're looking at to make that event experience for the attendee much more engaging.
It's great. I guess as an event attendee, I don't run any events myself, but as an attendee, if I was there, what sort of things would EventsAir be providing for the user experience?
Well, firstly, I mean, the app is a big part of that where you'll start to engage with an app before you even step foot
Mm.
through the door. How an event runs, some of the things that you probably don't notice, but the registration process and just how things run smoothly, the speaker management, how sponsors it can interact and so forth. There's a lot of technology that sits behind all of that. So a lot of our focus has been around the planner experience to make the heavy lifting around running events much simpler. All that translates to a much better event experience. But yeah, like I mentioned, the some of the things we're looking at now is trying to create some of those meeting matching and other intelligent components that we're able to bring to an event, just to allow people to connect better. So there's a whole series of opportunities we see there.
Mhm.
And how are you managing that balance as a CEO of a business that's splitting its focus between physical, in-person events and virtual? When you've obviously got, I imagine, a wide range of developers, and they all have competing interests for different directions that they want the company and the tool to go. How do you focus the company on what's going to be most impactful for your customers?
It's a really great question. And we've recently, I mean, we're an organization that was entrepreneurial led. So when I joined, we didn't have a product management function. It was the founder deciding, hey, we're going to do this. That's very common for a a startup, and as we're starting to mature and scale the business, we want obviously to be much more deliberate in the investment decisions we make. So we've structured our product team around the audiences that we serve. So those main audiences tend to be in three buckets. It's planners, it's attendees, and it's also developers. So I mentioned before about this ecosystem play where we can connect with other platforms. So we have a team that just focuses on how do we build out our platform to be able to talk nicely and be able to connect with other systems. Huge focus on the planner experience. I've mentioned some of the examples, but if we wake up every day thinking, how do we make the life of the planner much easier? It actually drives a lot of really good ideas and innovation into the platform. And then it's the same with the audience as well, or the attendee. So we've kind of think product wise around those key audiences or stakeholders that we're actually serving. And I think when you do that, it really focuses you on those things that create value for our customers. And in our case, we're trying to create value for our customers as well. So that's how we've done it. And so far, this is something that we've only recently in the last 6 months structured, but we're rapidly investing in product and also in our technology teams to rally behind that kind of stakeholder map, if that makes sense.
And forgive me if this is a bit too pointed, but would you be willing to disclose the type of development framework that your business employs, for example, Scrum, Waterfall, or Agile, and why did you choose that one for the business?
Well, I think, look, we're no different to a lot of SaaS businesses. I mean, in the last 2 years, we've gone through a lot of change within our technology team. And yes, we've adopted Scrum and Agile methodologies, and they're commonly accepted because that's just how you run a software company. There's been a lot of change at EventsAir. I've got a new CTO, Mehdi Khalili, who comes out of a really strong SaaS and also consulting background. And I mean, the team, it's totally a different look and feel now in terms of what it was 2 years ago. But look, we're adopting all of the modern type development frameworks to try and go faster. And again, a lot of what we've been focused on in the last 2 years has also been modernizing some of the back end and moving to a modern Azure infrastructure and making sure that our hosting and redundancy and all those great things are actually part of how we're improving the platform.
And when I think of these methodologies, I mean, typically they're employed to mitigate the risk of issues occurring as you develop. Can you walk us through some of the more typical challenges that you're experiencing running a system like EventsAir? Did any come to mind, and how did you sort of overcome those challenges as the CEO?
Well, we were a very lean organization when it was acquired. Like I said, the shift from 2 years ago is dramatic. And I've been around startups for some time where typically an entrepreneur will respond to the market requirements and follow the money. We're literally building a product that customers will love to use. And that's been part of the value that we've had, is that we've got a product that's incredibly deep and broad that customers love to use. Typically what happens is you end up possibly cutting a few corners. Like we didn't really have a QA type environment. Like we had maybe 1 or 2 QAs. So we've had to really focus on quality. We brought in a lot of expertise in terms of senior developers. There's just been a ton of roles that we've brought to the fore, which in the past was the domain of maybe 4 or 5 developers that built the core product. And now we've got a team that's literally 4 or 5 times that size that's driving the development. We've also done some things where we're using an offshore component out of India where we can look at various components of the product around site reliability engineering and so forth that we're utilizing. So it's a much, much more sophisticated setup around those product areas that I spoke of before.
I'd like to know, I guess, building on that as well. I mean, you've had an incredible career, in some leadership roles at the big tech giants, Microsoft, Xero. What have you taken away from your time at those companies that you've brought into EventsAir?
Yeah, well, I lean on a lot of those experiences. Microsoft was a great training ground in in so many ways because I had many different roles there. I worked in sales and marketing and product and channel. And I was there for about 15 years. So I liken working at Microsoft to doing maybe a couple of MBAs over that time
Yeah.
frame. You were thrown in the deep end. They gave me a lot of autonomy to go and figure things out, and it was a great learning environment. And you learn a lot of great disciplines around how some of those functions should operate. So I take a lot of great lessons from that time and apply them to what I'm doing now. And the Xero was a different experience because I joined Xero from Microsoft, in this big corporate, arguably one of the biggest technology corporates you could possibly imagine. And when I joined Xero, it was 5 or 6 staff. It was very much a startup in Australia. It was a bit of a shock, to be honest. I mean, I went in there, someone who was used to having a lot of resources and capital at my disposal, and suddenly day one I had to hire people. It was like, well, this is odd because I always had HR and a recruiter would come in my office, or if I had a legal issue, I had lawyers and stuff. But it was a great learning curve, and of course then Xero became a bit of a rocket ship, and that was a fun journey over 5-6 years growing that. And so it's sort of the big corporate and then the startup, and EventsAir is almost something in between. It's a founder-led business that's going into a scale mode, and we're taking capital to really grow and invest. And it's not something necessarily I've done in this capacity. It's like taking a house that's got huge potential, but it needs a lot of renovation. When I started EventsAir, we didn't have a HR function, we didn't have a product function. Development was very immature. I didn't have a marketing function. We had an agency that we were using. Our brand, I'll be honest, our brand was not great. It was pretty average. Despite that, they built a global business that was very successful and very profitable and had a great deal of loyalty. So in that sense, it's been a real challenge, but it's been a lot of fun to actually go in and say, okay, we're going to renovate this business and build all these functions. And I've hired a whole leadership team, and it's been fabulous. 2 years in, but we've still got a little ways to go. But we're certainly making good progress.
Talk me through some of that change and that growth over the last maybe 5 years. I know you've been there for 2. How many people were there in terms of like team and profit 5 years ago to where it is now?
So 5 years ago, well, this is pre-COVID. I mean, I'll talk post-COVID because COVID, post-COVID, we were, say, 100 staff. I mentioned all the functions that didn't exist, but today we're about 130. We're continuing to invest in all parts of the business. Like I said, the big shift was just ensuring that each of the functions existed and we had strong leadership. So, but like I said, like the technology side has been a big focus of ours to really lean in on that and improve it. And the other thing, the really interesting thing for me, being owned by private equity, is that we also have an appetite to invest around M&A. So the event tech space, we'll continue to look at opportunities where we can either expand in offshore markets or look at technology that we can acquire to improve our product offering. So they're things that are in play as well, which is always exciting.
On that note about, I guess, acquiring technologies, you mentioned earlier that you rely on, a lot of different technologies and companies in your ecosystem. What are some of the most important, I guess, or, most important software or tech that you rely on?
So I have a good partnership with Microsoft. So we built our product using .NET and we host with Azure. Probably to answer that, I think one of the things we've done is with limited development team as we're growing that is we've also partnered with some really great software partners that have specific skills in certain areas. So we partnered with one organization that helped us around Azure migration to a modern platform. So we lent on them. They were leaders in that field. Actually, I don't mind saying it's Arenco. They're a Microsoft partner. They've done a fabulous job in helping us migrate. And then we used another company which called MakerX, who have been also incredible. They're a software development house that have helped us do a number of things within the product to improve it. So we partnered with them. We've actually got a release coming out shortly where we've completely redesigned the whole skin and UI and UX of the platform. So coming back to where we were as an entrepreneur-led company, we had great engineers building great software. When engineers build great software, they don't necessarily have a great design mindset. No criticism, but our software needed an uplift, and so we engaged MakerX. We've engaged MakerX in a number of areas to look at particular areas of technology that we can uplift our product, and we'll continue to do that. So I think it's the partnerships that you're able to identify there as well, which can complement our development teams. And that way we're able to go a lot faster. So we've had great experience in being able to do that.
It sounds like partnerships played a pivotal role in the success of the growth of the business. Do any other key strategies come to mind that were leveraged to ensure that you were achieving the type of growth that you're seeing today?
I think I don't know about strategies. I think a lot of it's just been execution. Probably the one thing that I learned at Xero, which I've applied here, is that we I went and built the leadership team. That took some time, but I've been able to handpick key leaders across the different functions of the business, and that's a really important starting point. I mean, it might sound obvious, but there was a lot of change. In the first 6 months, we brought in a lot of new people. We lost people. Some of those people we needed to replace, and others self-selected. But over a period of time, you kind of have this vision of the sort of culture and leadership that you want to build as a company.
Yep.
The thing I'm really pleased about is that and this is something I've been very big on in every role I've played, is just really focusing in on culture. And so I have the best leadership team, and I mean, I'm sure a lot of people say that, but I genuinely have an amazing group of leaders that I work with every day. And then through the organization, the people that have remained here are very loyal. They've got incredible domain expertise. They're very customer centric, and they're just incredibly loyal. They bleed purple, as I like to say, because we're a purple brand at EventsAir. And that's been awesome. So you want to have that nice blend of people that are coming in with new skills and capabilities and experiences that they can inject into the growth of the business. But equally, you need to have those people that are kind of like part of that family. This was a great business when it was acquired. My role is to take and retain all the great things that made it great in the first place, but then to seek opportunities and ways that we can take it forward. And I think we're on a very good trajectory. Something that we look at and measure very carefully is the engagement around staff engagement and those sorts of things. And we're doing very well. And you need that because you work through challenges as well. Life's not perfect when you're trying to do this. You have challenges along the way. We've had technology challenges. We've had all sorts of things thrown our way, and you work through those. And I think if you've got a strong culture, you're able to respond and come out the other side much, much stronger.
Definitely. I mean, sorry, I
Oh,
was
no.
going to say culture is one of those values that I think is underrated in tech or overlooked a lot of the time. But
Yeah.
I've interviewed so many business owners, and those ones that do survive and do make it through those challenging times are the ones that have that culture, those people in place. They're a team. A lot of them from, family businesses to start with, and they keep that sort of family business culture and people-centric culture going. You mentioned a few other values as well, things like, innovation, your partnerships. Are there any other, I guess, keys to your success or values that you hold dear to EventsAir?
Sorry, maybe before we just do that, I want to dig into something that you raised there, something
Yeah.
that's really important to me. I think I experience this and many other people do as well. They want to learn, especially from your perspective, how do you pick these people that drive the culture that you're after, right? I think so many people that are wanting to start a business right now, the typical methodology they do is they just look at your CV. Did you work at a great company? How long were you there for? Surely if you were there a long time, they must have loved you. But I think people that really drive solid businesses are the ones that know how to pick the right people that will create the culture that you want to foster.
Yeah.
How do you pick these individuals?
Yeah, what I'm about to say might be a little bit counterintuitive, but well, I mean, look, at a basic level, I'm a big believer in diversity, and diversity of thinking, not just male, female, etc. So
Mhm.
I don't try and hire people that agree with me. We have healthy debate. One of my favorite books is Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni, and it talks there about fear of conflict, and we have healthy conflict on my team. I mean,
Yeah.
I have passionate debates with my CFO. He's great.
I loves a passionate
He's
debate.
Same.
Yeah.
You'll listen to this and you'll be laughing, but we have really passionate debates about stuff, and we don't always agree. Um, and the things I really value is transparency and just open and honest communication. The one thing I think my team, right through the organization, would say about me is that I just tell it how it is. I just don't bullshit. Like life's too short, and I think people appreciate that because there's a lot of moments where things get tough and your staff will look to you for honesty, right? I mean, I think it might sound really obvious, but in a lot of organizations where you're trying to gloss over things or something bad happens, you sort of brush over it.
That's such a great answer. I'm loving that.
Yeah, I love that as
Question.
well. I think you're right. So many people are afraid of conflict and they just run in the opposite direction in
Yep.
the effort of just having general appeasement within their organization. And obviously, if that's the case, if no one's ever actually driving friction, that you're never really going to get honest opinions from people because people are playing the safe game.
You need devil's advocate. You need
do.
that to grow.
So the counterintuitive, because you asked about how I go about hiring. So what I found, it was interesting. I was talking to another founder or a founder friend of mine, and we were talking about hiring, and we kind of agreed on something, and that is that you mentioned looking at people who've got great logos during their career, and we've actually gone against that trend in many respects. I mean, it might look great for someone like me at Microsoft and Xero. I'll be honest, unless they're there in the formative years, it's often not a good fit or a good sign. Some of my former Xero counterparts won't like hearing this, but anyone who came to Xero after a number of years had it pretty easy. I mean, that thing was a rocket ship, right? So I actually found that people that have worked in businesses that have had to really fight and grind and hustle to win, and that could go across any different function, whether it be marketing or sales. But where I've had success is these 2-tier or 3-tier or B and C type tech companies where they've had to learn some hard stuff to be successful. And so I look across my team and that's something that I think has worked for us. And I've also had some people I've hired from strong brands that have not worked out because I think, they haven't been used to that sort of hustle. They've relied, I mean, I'll admit selling at Microsoft was pretty easy because, I mean, most of our customers, it's almost like captive audience, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we still had to close commercial deals, and I'd spent a lot of time in sales at Microsoft, and we're closing very large deals, but most people were using Microsoft. So, that's been an interesting insight, was to hire outside of those the flashy brands.
It's a great way to look at it, definitely, in terms of, if you're working for a smaller team, you wear many hats, you're part of the problem solving. I guess it makes you that little bit more of a team player as well sometimes, or it helps you with your problem solving skills. So they're great qualities to look for in staff. It's a really good way of looking at it.
My previous manager had a similar mindset to you. He's a great leader at Procore right now. His name's Chris Skelton. And he told me before I left, you need to sort of evaluate who you are and what you want in a business when you're running it. You want people that are either growth focused, or you want the ones that maintain organizations. And they're two completely different people that are great at their jobs, but are just great at managing different life cycles of the organization. And it sounds like what you're describing is, that it's great. You can look at any CV to figure out who they are or what their background is, but you really want to be, if you're in a growth mindset, looking for people that come from a background of managing growth businesses, not coming in during the management life cycle.
And it's also, I mean, I'm probably not the best example. I mean, I came out of a large enterprise like Microsoft and worked for a startup, and it doesn't always work. I mean, I see sometimes we interview candidates that are, during the interview, they'll say, yeah, like I can build this team, and they'll always talk about who they're going to hire. And quite often in a startup, in a small business, you actually need to roll your sleeves up and get some shit done yourself. So it's it doesn't always work. I mean, I know that when I took the Xero role, I had to fly over to New Zealand because Rod Drury, you know, he said, you got to come over and meet the team, because he said, I don't think you look like a corporate soldier when we look at your CV. And a lot of people shit themselves because they look at you as like 15 years at Microsoft. My God, this is not the right fit. But he said, I can see you're not necessarily a corporate soldier. So but some people can make the transition. I think startups that can bring people in from big corporates can really benefit from that. And in other cases, it's just not the right fit.
Yeah.
You can't make the transition. And startups are really hard. Like, I think there's a few people that were a little bit concerned when I started consulting into startups coming out of Xero, because Xero, during the time I was there, we raised 450 million. And what I learned when I left Xero is that startups are actually a lot harder than like Xero was, it was the right product at the right time. Everything went well. We raised a lot of capital. You can make a lot of mistakes with that sort of money and still get it right. But the reality is that most startups are capital constrained. So you can't come in there and go, oh, you should hire all these roles, and it doesn't work. The real world doesn't typically work that way. It's a lot harder. So that's something I've learned after Xero. Sure. In some cases, the hard way.
Yeah, it's great that you've been able to bring that to here, to your role here as well. I think circling back to my question earlier was, I guess, and off the back of Arvin's question about people. So obviously people, the right people are important to the business. You've mentioned culture as well, and that's something that, can be a lot of the time overlooked in tech. But I think any business owner I talk to, any successful business, they have a great culture. And that is so important, especially maybe coming from family values. If there's that culture there, people are on board with the vision. You've also talked about innovation, and you talked about, a few other values. What are some of the values of EventsAir and the keys to its success?
Oh, good. I've got them up on the wall here. Where are they all?
You don't know them off by heart?
Talk about a few.
Recite them in the mirror every morning? No.
One of our values is seize the moment. And that's all about sense of urgency, because I've worked in a lot of different companies and different industries, and all tech, but, different. There's one thing about event planners is that you don't get a second chance if things go wrong. And so seize the moment is about that sense of urgency. Like, you literally don't get a second chance. Like when there's 500 people registering for an event, stuff's got to work. And when it doesn't, it's brutal. So that's one of our values. The other one is build bold. So we're all about innovation. Like building bold means taking on challenging technology, challenging product initiatives that we think, going beyond the obvious. So the really good example of that was through COVID. Like the team built a virtual platform and shipped it within 90 days. And literally that saved a lot of our customers. Now, it wasn't the perfect solution, but it allowed our customers to be able to operate. And that was all about building bold. One of our other values is community. It's about how we support one another. We've got a very diverse culture here, and it's how we work together, how we support one another, how we embrace diversity. And I think diversity brings better outcomes when you've got people that are coming at problems from different points of view, different cultures, different backgrounds. And that's always existed as part of the company. So there's just a few examples, but so that's good.
And you said 90 days you were able to release that system. I think a lot of people can think, oh yeah, 90 days, that's good. But from a software perspective, that is rapid innovation. That's about as fast as it gets. I think many of the tech companies out there, if you asked them, just put like a small button on the screen, they'll be like, yeah, next year's release.
Well, I think as the story goes, and it's sort of mythology, but Trevor Gardner, who was the founder, on a Friday, I think when everything went into lockdown, sat down with one of our key developers here, and they sort of mapped things out in an afternoon. And this developer went over the weekend and just worked around the clock. And on Monday, came forward with a prototype and said, look, this is how I think we can build it. And then they just got on with it. So that's build bold. That's having a crack. Yeah. But, and you need a good culture to be able to do that, where people are going to lean in and be prepared to go the extra mile.
And be prepared to get on board with this risk or this, this new idea. They're behind it. They're like, yeah, let's all give it a go. They're not, that culture is important with that.
I want to bring it back to some parts of, you've been touching on this quite a bit, your Xero background. Now, obviously, you played a huge part in scaling Xero in Australia. What were some of the biggest hurdles that came from growing from a small team to hundreds of employees or hundreds of thousands of customers?
Yeah. So, look, the first thing I'd say is that Xero was the right product at the right time. There's a great saying: never confuse timing with talent. I'm going to be self-deprecating here. Look, I, I often joke, I would have had to work really hard to screw that thing up. But look, I mean, in all honesty, so it was the right product at the right time. You're talking cloud computing was coming to the fore. We had a competitor in the market that I believe at the time had lost its way. We had a great product. We had an incredible brand, and we built a great team, and we had plenty of capital. So, that was awesome. I think, again, some of the same principles was, the first year was actually hard. The first year was tough. And I've always believed, it's one thing I've learned right through the lesson, product wins, like good product wins. And our product was really good in the early days, but we had some gaps. And the biggest gap we had, if I recall back 2011, it was, I was going to see a lot of accountants and they said, look, we love what you guys are doing. We love your product. You don't have payroll. Like small business needs payroll. So we knew that was a gap, and we actually ended up acquiring a small payroll company, and it took us a year to kind of revamp it and rewrite some of the code and embed it in the product. But the day we launched payroll, our sales trebled and sustained. It just took off because we delivered on that product promise. I think user experience is another big one. That was always ingrained in Xero from day one. And, to come out with a tagline, beautiful accounting software, was just an absolute misnomer, right? I mean, it's like, how can accounting software be beautiful? You got to be kidding me. But it was very effective. And I think it created excitement around a task that you have to do. And I think that was part of the benefit of Xero, was that this was a must have. Like you have to prepare, accounts, you've got to do financials if you're a small business. But if we can make that experience amazing. And the guy who actually did that, like employee number 4, was his name's going to escape me now, but the head of design, and he actually talked about a card game where a matching of cards with his daughter, and he would you'd sort of match the cards and put them back down, and then when you got a match, you sort of took them off the pile. And he used that sort of same motive to think about bank reconciliation, which was gamifying a process that you had to do. But if you can make it really cool, where you have the transaction in the bank account matching Xero, and they come together and there's this green tick and it flies off, it's almost like you're creating this kind of, a dopamine effect.
For accounting.
Right? So, things like that, which took the obvious and just sort of reimagined how you do that. And that user experience has really stuck with me from my Xero days, where you've got to really focus on that. And this is one of the reasons when I joined the company, we've hired this amazing guy, Warren Prasic, in the business, who came in, and I gave him a project over summer. I said, I want you to kind of reimagine the user interface. I want to make this like really cool. It's too clunky. And, came back over summer and he goes, hey, what do you think of this? And we're just like, yes. Like, it was so exciting. But I get excited about that because I put myself in the shoes of the customer and our planners that they're using this like day in, day out. So if we can create an awesome experience, it makes it much more sticky, it drives retention, helps with sales. Like, it's just the flow on effect in terms of the business outcomes is incredible. So there's some of the things I learned at Xero. Look, and then the obvious things, leadership. I established a fantastic leadership team at Xero. Xero's challenges were a little bit different culturally, because I think what happens when you're leading a rocket ship is you get this kind of culture of entitlement. And we fought really hard against that as a team, that we're hiring really, really talented people at a rate of maybe 20 new hires a month. It was exciting. We had plenty of money. We had great premises, pool table. We had coffee machine and bar, and it was like, it was a startup dream, right? But you got to hang on to reality. And, I really, really fought hard to maintain that customer focus and that grounded culture. And I mean, I could talk all day about this, but it wasn't always easy. We had to consciously check in and just make sure, are we getting ahead of ourselves? Are we still grounded in what we're doing? Are we still, ensuring that we're very customer centric and not becoming arrogant? I saw that at Microsoft. I don't mind saying that, in the late 90s, the DOJ was looking to break up the company. Microsoft lost its way in the late 90s with an arrogant culture. And I used to talk to the Xero stuff about that. You think about the brands that came to the fore when Microsoft lost its way and became trying to get that customer centricity back. You had companies like Amazon and Google, Salesforce.com, Apple, Resurgence, right? Some of the biggest tech brands of our time all came to the fore over a period when Microsoft was navel gazing because it had lost its way with customers. So, yeah, look, I think that's something that's really near and dear to my heart, is just making sure that people feel grounded and appreciative, even if you are a rocket ship.
I love that. I'm a big advocate for beautiful software. I've encountered, I'm sure we've all experienced this at some stage. You're using the most powerful tool in the world, but when it's ugly or it just doesn't flow easily and give you that good user experience, it just feels like you're using the worst product in the market. It just doesn't instill that kind of confidence that you like. And I think as a customer, when evaluating that system against other ones in the market as well, even if you have a worse product that looks way better, they're going to gravitate towards the other one. It's like having a Lamborghini sitting in front of you. You're going to next to a Honda Civic, but the Lamborghini might have like the worst engine in it. People are going to go, the Lamborghini's better, surely. You know what I mean? And I think that does play a big impact in the way that people evaluate these systems and perceive
no one
in the
loves
market.
admin. No one loves admin.
Yeah.
And if you can make it a little bit more fun or interactive or gamify it, and I
Yeah.
love that so many, apps and businesses are gamifying what they do a little bit to entice. And, have you gamified what you do now? Is there anything, in the platform that you've got that gamifies it for the user?
We're looking at that. I mean, it's, we're actually looking at some of the things we're doing. We're building a new attendee app.
Great.
And that's been reimagined from the point of view of, there's a lot of our competitors use attendee apps, and they do all the things you'd expect. You register and it's got a QR code, and then you build your agenda and you can look up speakers and so forth. And what we're trying to do is reimagine the customer journey before the event and after the event, so that there's an ongoing engagement with content and with the event itself. So I don't know if that's gamification, but that's the beauty of designers, is that they reimagine what you're trying to achieve. It's not just, I've got this app that, I mean, some people don't even download the apps because they're just painful. So we're looking at things like that to improve, but it starts with good design thinking.
Yeah.
And my product team I probably annoy them because I used to be a product manager many years ago, so I get involved in a lot of the product stuff. And I remember I joined a board of a company once, and they were releasing, funnily enough, a new app, and the CEO was really excited. I'm not going to mention the company. And anyway, I said, it's awesome, you're releasing an app. And anyway, I downloaded the app on a Friday night, and I literally couldn't sleep. And I got up at like 5 a.m. on Saturday, and I wrote this 26-page, presentation with screenshots and arrows going, what the WTF and what is this? And then I waited for the weekend because I didn't want to ruin the guy's weekend, and I sent it to him on a Sunday night. I said, we need to talk. And the beauty of that was, on the Thursday when I got to meet the product team, I just joined, he'd printed out my presentation, and it was sitting there on the table, and all the product team were there. And I walked in, I just laughed, and I said, oh, you must hate me. And they go, no, this is great. You actually give a shit. So
it's constructive feedback. Yeah, it's great.
It's just
People
one of
love
those
it.
things that I think, I just think product's so important to get right. It's just, if you get that right, I mean, there's a lot of other things you got to get right. At EventsAir, we didn't have a marketing team at all, and we've got now a world-class marketing team, and they're just super numerically focused on results, on driving leads, MQLs, SQLs, conversions. Like, the attention to detail is second to none. Like, it's amazing, and that's been built in 18 months. Like, it's been crazy. So all that sort of stuff. That attention to detail across every function of the business really makes a huge difference.
Mhm. I'm curious about, when you said you're trying to connect the before and after of the event together, is there a lot of, I guess, want for that after data of attendees at the event? Is that what you're looking at as well in terms of what you offer? Is it capturing that event data and having that continuation with the customer or the attendee?
Yeah, look, absolutely. And I think if you think about there's a number of stakeholders in the running of an event. The professional conference organizer wants a great attendee experience. They often get judged by that. But it's a return on investment from, let's say, a corporation is running an event. You want to know, I mean, you're running an event typically for to drive sales, drive business, drive brand. What's the return on investment and the reporting aspects of that and how you can actually measure the success of that event is critical. And this is something that we currently do. We've got very rich reporting back end, and it's something that we've had for many, many years. But how do we sort of take that next level and allow much, much richer tools, BI tools, to be able to interrogate that sort of data? I mentioned meeting matching and the ability to be able to, some events are buyer and sponsor type events where they're set up purely to drive business. So the more impactful, and if you can use AI to drive much better matching, you get better results, driving greater commerce, better return on investment. They run more events. So that's the way we think about it. We're not there yet. I mean, we're working on a lot of different initiatives, but our vision is to really nail some of those experiences.
I'm mindful of the time here. There's a few things that I want to give you the opportunity to do for your business. First and foremost, could you tell the customers about what's on the roadmap? What can they expect in the future from your business?
Lots. We've so I mentioned the attendee experience. I should bring up the roadmap. We're just going through it this morning. So around attendee, yeah, we're the big focus right now is the attendee app. We're also wanting to improve a lot of the front end aspects of what we do. So when you build an event website or you build a registration page, we've just gone through an exercise to redesign a lot of how that looks. So it's really, really sexy.
Yep.
Some of the stuff we've had in market for a while now hasn't really been of that sort of modern UI. So a lot of effort going into that. Like I said, around the planner experience, the most immediate thing is this launch around the new user interface and the skin, and that's going out in 2 weeks. So we'll monitor that and then look at, where are there other opportunities around planner experience. There's some very specific features within our platform, which I won't dive into details, that we're looking to improve, which are all about planners and so on. And like I said, it's opening up the platform around the API so that we can better integrate with other platforms. And then just in and around that, just a ton of work going on across the platform in terms of modernizing and improving.
I've got one question off the back of that. In terms of you looking at, you capturing user data through your app, what sort of, I guess, cybersecurity infrastructure do you have on that, and how important is that privacy?
Yeah, look, very important. One of the things we do is we support a lot of payment gateways. So if you're registering an event, you need to pay. We've long had PCI DSS compliance to be able to take credit cards. We've actually just launched our own payment gateway. And the reason we've done that is that we can actually embed that into the registration process, much, much better experience, much less defects in terms of payments that get rejected because of potential fraud and so forth. So we've seen dramatic improvements there, and we're actually pushing that pretty hard. So that's a really great innovation. That's as much about building a payments business as it is about creating a much, much better experience for attendees. We just recently, in the last few months, also achieved SOC 2 compliance. And that's obviously a very comprehensive security compliance requirement that a lot of our customers are demanding. And then beyond that, obviously, the privacy side of things is huge because we're capturing a lot of data on attendees. So these are all big considerations. We've, again, coming back to your questions about what some of the things we've done since I've joined here, we've now got a whole security team. We didn't have that 2 years ago. So these are part of the things about scaling up a business, making sure that you've got a lot of those hygiene things covered, as well as doing the cool stuff around product innovation.
Yeah, great.
Before we wrap up, you've been in the tech industry for decades, from the early days of IT to the rise of cloud software. Is there a particular piece of technology that's had a big impact on your life that you're a huge advocate for? What would you recommend to the market that they look into?
Wow. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, it depends. I mean, from a business standpoint or from a personal productivity standpoint.
Could
You
do
pick.
both. Yeah.
I can't pick one particular piece of software, I'll be honest. I mean, um, you know, that's a tough question. Sorry, I'm struggling with that because I just there's so many different tools. I can't sort of pick one that's
You could
gonna.
pick a couple. You could rattle off
Yeah,
a
you could
couple
rattle off a couple.
that have been, pivotal.
Maybe an easy way to ask this is, if you left the company that you're in right now and you went to a startup again, what would you be telling them? We need this.
It's funny when I joined Xero from Microsoft, I advocated to move everything to Google. I actually really like the Google suite of products, just in terms of the collaborative nature, being able to work with. Yeah. I mean, I don't know whether you want to publish this. I'm not a great fan of all the Microsoft products. So, and I think also, not that we use it here, but I really like Slack. Slack is an incredible productivity tool. We use Teams. I mean, I'm a bit of you got to be a bit of a chameleon and sort of work with what is already here. So, but if I had my choice, I'd be Google and Slack all the way, in any company that I would run. But I don't insist on it, and I've got to listen to my team in terms of what's already in use here. So I've got a very influential CTO, so I've got to listen to Mehdi.
Mhm. That's great. No, I love it. I love that and it is like that. You've got your personal favorite, but you always you can't get everyone on board just because you prefer that one. It's a lot of retraining. So that's great that you've got yours if you could do it again.
Yeah.
But also, you have to work with what you've got.
I remember when I joined Xero, I was the only one in the whole company. I was employee number 85, and I had a Microsoft phone, which is sort of unheard of now.
Yeah.
But back in 2011, and things weren't working, and I kept ringing IT, and he just said, "Just get yourself a bloody iPhone, mate. Like, just make life easy. We'll buy you one." So I love my iPhone as well. I tried Android, but I kept coming back to the iPhone. So that's obviously just a tool of the trade now, but I do love it.
Well, look, I'm sure the audience right now is wondering, where can they find you or learn more about your business? Would you like to take a moment to inform the audience where they can find you?
Absolutely, yeah. So we're eventsair.com. We're if you want us to, if you're interested, if you're running events and so forth, you can actually fill in one of the many forms that are scattered across the website to capture details. Any one of the guys can provide a demonstration. You can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm obviously that's my go-to. I'm also on X or Twitter. X, what is it? X. Chris Rid, Chris_Rid or something. But yeah, find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way.
Perfect.
Great.
Well, mate, it's been, I don't know about you, Sarah, but this has been one of the most interesting conversations I've had. And this is definitely be something I'm going to watch again when the podcast gets released. Thank you so much for your time, for coming on. I know this is something people like yourselves, an hour out of your day is a big gap. So thank you so much for coming onto the show for us.
And thank you for your honesty and
Yeah.
openness as well with
Really
everything you've
appreciate it.
talked about. It's been wonderful. It's been very informative, and I loved it.
Yeah, thanks. I hope I don't get myself into trouble.
Yeah.
Probably threw a few people under the bus there, but that's okay.
That's great. Thanks so much, Chris. You have yourself a great day.
Thanks a lot,
We'll
guys.
keep in touch.
Catch you later, mate.
Bye.
Awesome.
Me again. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for tuning into the Tech Panel. If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe on YouTube and follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn to stay connected. A big thank you to our major sponsor, Codeworthy, for powering today's episode. And join us again on the next episode of the Tech Panel, where tech minds meet.